So, what are some of the indicators that could indicate somebody is being trafficked, whether it's sex trafficking or labor trafficking? I want to get into that today. Hello, my name is Brendan O'Neill. I've been a criminal private investigator in Colorado for over 20 years, and I work in the areas of human trafficking, runaways, missing persons, and cold case files. So let's jump right in. I think I've gotten probably 5 comments, questions from people saying, hey, what do we look for? And I mentioned in the last video, I did want to jump into this. And then we're also going to jump into what you can do to assist if you suspect that human trafficking is going on. So some of the indicators, and by the way, this list is by no means exhaustive, but we've got to be on the alert for these things. And I advise, and we'll get into that really later, but if you suspect it, I think it's better to report it and be wrong than to not report it. And unfortunately, they are being trafficked. The other thing is that you can also report anonymously. And a lot of folks feel like, I want to help, but God, what am I getting myself into? Am I going to be in danger? We'll talk about that too. So some of the behavioral issues that you'll observe could be: are they anxious? Do they even seem paranoid or fearful? Another one is their inability to make eye contact. They look down. They won't engage you. Another one could be: do they appear depressed and distant emotionally? And for me, a big red flag is: do you see them exhibit signs of physical harm? Do you see bruises? Do you see cuts? Do you see, other indicators that they're not being well cared for? Are they malnourished? Do they appear drug addicted? And another one is going to be, and this to me is the one that I see a lot. And when their trafficker is kind of in the area watching over them, standing next to them, and they're not allowed to speak for themselves. They're at you, maybe you say, hey, how's it going, or do I know you? And they jump in, meaning the trafficker, with an answer. So those are some of the things. Other things you should look for is if you are talking to them, especially if they're by themselves or out of earshot of the trafficker, potential trafficker, because we don't know yet. They can't tell you where they're staying. They don't really know the area very well. That might indicate that they were transported from another state, which is a classic technique of traffickers. And we'll talk about that in future videos here before long. That to me is a big one. Or they vaguely reference that they're here for a job or working off a debt even, or they can't really talk about who their employer is. These are some of the things that you need to be cognizant of. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are being trafficked. Those symptoms could indicate a variety of things, but maybe it prompts you to start looking more closely at this individual. And again, if it seems like they're, being watched over or groomed, and also I think human beings have an innate instinct when we know something's off. Another indicator could be the clothing they're wearing. Are they dressed kind of provocatively? Are they scantily clad despite the fact that it's January? Things like that. I think that's certainly a red flag, something you want to look at. So those are many of the things that we just need to be cognizant of. And in the last video, I mentioned the hand signal. And this has been discussed by the State Department. They have a branch about human trafficking interdiction, people that are dedicated to that, along with the Department of Justice, the UN, and other not-for-profits that are working in this area. I talked about it last night. I'll just say it again. So it's this signal, and that's it. And what it is, again, thumb is pressed against the palm, and the 4 fingers come down. That indicates, hey, I'm trapped. I have read stories and seen cases, and a few that I worked, where somebody was in, for example, a mall, and a kid walked through a food court, and they dropped their hand behind their back. And this is one smart kid with that signal. And somebody noticed it. alerted mall security. They then contacted local law enforcement, and they were there before those individual. Well, actually, I think it was two adults, a man and a woman, and a child could leave the mall, if memory serves correctly. But that doesn't really matter. What's important is that symbol is out there. There was another case, and good for this clerk. They were at I'm not sure which. It was a convenience store, and probably shouldn't give the name anyway. But the child that was with this adult, the clerk just it seemed like the kid was acting weird, as was the adult. And that symbol was made, and the kid rested her hand on the counter and left it there. And this clerk was on top of things, and they left, but they were able to get a make, model, and year of the car based on its features, a license plate number, and the external security cameras caught them on video. You want to talk about a big win, and it didn't take long for them to track those individuals down, rescue the kid, arrest the perpetrator. The predator is really a more apt description. So, be on the lookout for that. And then if you're, for example, if you're in the medical profession, and most medical professionals are trained to look for this, they will look for signs of bruising and cuts on the body. Is there an indication of sexual trauma or repeated sexual activity that might be above normal parameters for an average person? Things like that. Also, they'll look for those emotional and behavioral indicators that I just talked about earlier. But if you are in that profession, it never hurts to be reminded to be vigilant for that kind of stuff. And one last thing, if you're, for example, a hotel employee or you travel a lot on business, one of the things you should be aware of is, are you seeing kids, for example, loitering around the hotel? Whether it's in the lobby or the hallway, have you observed that they're going in and out of rooms a fair amount, different rooms in particular? Also, are you seeing that they appear to be unable to leave, or they don't want to engage you, or maybe, for example, one of the key things is, seems like everybody has a cell phone these days. And it's hard to imagine, especially a younger person without their cell phone, right? That's their lifeline to the world and their friends. No cell phone. That's another way in which traffickers control and manipulate their victims. They also seem drug addicted. And that's another thing we're going to get into. That's another means of control. There's a whole separate video that I'm putting together for that. But whether you're an employee of a hotel or you're a business traveler and you see these things, be cognizant of it and make note, look more closely. And, again, if you're wrong, I'd rather be wrong and think, okay, it was just a misunderstanding, than be right and know that, what, I could have done something and that individual was victimized. And again, you can do it anonymously. So keep that in mind. In the next video, I'm going to jump into what you can do to help somebody who's being trafficked. It's a brave thing to do, but it can also be a very dangerous thing to do. We're going to talk about your safety and ways to do it right. And really, getting involved is a risky proposition, as I just said, but there are ways that you can really make an impact and help that person right then and there. And I'll talk about that in the next video. So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. Let's get the word out. I really appreciate your time. I think by now you're probably, if you've watched my other videos, I'm passionate about this, and we got to keep fighting, folks. And I want to thank you again for your time and attention. And stay safe and keep your loved ones safe as well. All right. See you next time. Bye.